Welcome back to a special Tutor Ramble episode. I'm one of your hosts, Austin.
And I'm your other host, Richard.
And today we are discussing Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. Rich, what do you... Okay. Oh, he's gone. Today, I am discussing Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This book, let me...
Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da.
All right, I hope you guys appreciate it. I don't want to talk about this book. Okay, I kind of do. A little bit of deep animosity. I want to hate this book. I read this book again. I reread it, and I hate it just the same.
Your opinion did not change since the first read.
Actually, a small bit of it did, and we'll get to that later on.
Okay.
But
yes.
overall, my opinion has not changed. I don't like the book. I really don't like the book. But I will mention what has changed in my experience.
The only problem here is I also don't like the book.
Yeah!
So we have... The problem here, Rich, is you and I, since we have a similar opinion about this book, we will do our best in the spoiler-free section. 10 to 15 minutes spoiler-free on the Name of the Wind. We'll do our best to say, hey, who would like this book? To go against our opinions, which you shouldn't ever do that.
No, never.
But in case the people that hate watch us, just like you hate read Name of the Wind,
Yep.
for those people, we'll see if we could get the right target audience. However, Rich, you and I, we will have many complaints about this book. How about you give your one-sentence review? I'll give my one-sentence review. Then we'll talk about Patrick Rothfuss, the author, the awards, etc., and then get into spoilers later.
This book contains my favorite chapter that I've ever read, period, from any book. It's too bad that the rest of the chapters bore me to death, and the ending makes me regret that I ever read it.
Succinct, I like it. That's okay.
You want my condensed
that's
opinion? You want an hour's worth of discussion?
Cue the outro. Cue the outro.
What are your overall thoughts?
I will say this. For the Name of the Wind, you prepared me and set my expectations for me not liking it. So I don't show that hate as much as you. What I think about the book is it is a potential masterpiece that is so severely flawed, it frustrates me because of what could have been. There's something in here that is special, and I loved something so much about it, but it's also so invigoratingly, frustratingly,
Yeah.
So... this will be a passionate talk.
You didn't have to go through my experience on a first read-through. I was no spoilers. I knew nothing about the book, but the ending pissed me off so much that I had a visceral reaction to it. I warned you ahead of time.
You prepped me for the ending.
Ending sucks. You may like a lot in there, though, but the ending sucks. So you went in expectation. So you may not like the ending, but you didn't have the surprise, shock, and disappointment of regret.
That's the exact thing, is you set my expectations for exactly what I think about the book. You know when you say for a book that someone praises and lauds this one book and you end up liking it, but going, okay, it's not the best book ever. You said it's the best book ever, and it's just great. So it almost looks like you hate the book. Then you have the situation where you go, wow, this book is awful. I hate it. It's the worst book ever made. And you read it and go, it's mid, but it's way better than you thought it was. You set me up going, it's flawed. I hate the ending, but overall, book has this and this going good for it. And I just agree. So I read it and went, yeah. So I don't have an excited opinion of, oh, it's way better than you said it was, or a worse going, it's way worse than you said it was, because it's exactly as you said it was.
I kind of wanted you to say it's way worse than I said it was. I kind of wanted
You set me up perfectly.
But I will take that. I'll take being correct.
I'm saying you did a good.
Good.
You did a good one. So let's start this off how we usually do. So again, spoiler free up until we give our spoiler warning for Name of the Wind, okay?
Okay.
Let's set this up. Author, Patrick Rothfuss. What do you know about Pat?
Doesn't keep some of his promises.
Ooh, there's some controversy, yes.
However, he is a very good writer in the sense he pays a lot of attention to his prose. It took him years to write the first one.
Do you know how many years?
I think it
Have
was
the number
something
here.
like 8, wasn't it?
No,
Longer.
longer.
Oh.
14 years. 14. So it's no surprise that book 3 has taken him this long. He's already had that problem where the first book took him that long to write.
Mm-hmm.
So 14 years to do that, and he went to college for 9 years. Not that it took him 9 years to graduate, but he continuously went for different degrees and continuously went to college, which, to let you all know, this book, for those who haven't read, most of it takes place at a university, an academy. So you could see some of that knowledge coming from Patrick Rothfuss's life. I assume is why it's university-based.
Sure.
And
I get that.
do you want to give context for the controversy here? Because to let people go, hey, maybe you haven't heard The Name of the Wind. This series is the King Killer Chronicle. And book 1 and 2 is out. Book 1 came out in 2007. Book 2 relatively shortly after that. And book 3 has not been out since then. And it's 2024 as we're filming this.
Yeah. Further on is this book, when it came out, was a smash hit. New York Times bestseller. It massive, on close to level of George R.R. Martin level success. It's well received. People really love this book. The controversy later comes in with not just that book 3 has not been released for so many years,
Right.
and he has said, "Oh yeah, I think it should be released next year," and it never really is. It's kind of that It's a similar thing to George R.R. Martin of, "Hey, I'm working on it. I think it'll be released then," and then it's not. So no one really believes that. Then there was the worst thing of he was on a charity stream, and I appreciate patron members for actually clarifying me on this whole situation. We had a whole book club on it. It was pretty fun. But they clarified that on the charity stream that he was doing, an ad hoc decision where he's talking with the people said, "Hey, if it reaches this, I'll release like chapter 1." And that was his agreement. It wasn't stated as a stretch goal. It wasn't baked into the whole charity thing, but it was a ad hoc decision, and he kept building on it of, "Oh, I'll hire some voice actors for it," and started building and building. Ultimately, they reached that financial goal, and he didn't release chapter 1. Still hasn't. So a lot of people really don't like that he went back against his word, especially with charity money tied to it. So that's the negative stuff with Patrick Rothfuss.
He didn't release it when he said he would and made a promise ad hoc during a stream.
Yeah.
Which I recently did with the Stormlight books. For a little bit of context, we had a live stream, and if Rich this month finishes all of the Stormlight archive in 1 month, I will dress up as Syl. Now, the thing is,
we have altered the deal
a little bit, because
a little bit.
Now you are going to dress up as Shallan.
I will dress up as Shallan.
Yeah.
If I do not finish. If I fail the bet, I will
Yes.
dress as Shallan.
Yes.
We have also altered the deal in the sense
This is
So
your
we're
doing. Whatever you
I
feel
wanted
good.
I wanted a different experience. So I wanted to do the graphic audio
yeah.
version of it. So I'm going through that, but it's actually shorter than the standard audiobook version.
Yeah.
So what
Like 40, 50 hours shorter, something like
it's
that.
like it's about 40 hours shorter.
Yeah.
So in addition, it's fair.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing it all at graphic audio, but I'm adding on to the bet that I will also finish Tress of the Emerald Sea, Yumi the Nightmare Painter,
And our book club book, which was just picked Children
also
of Time.
I'll also do that book club
Jesus.
book, and I will also finish Dawn
Shard.
No. Well, Dawn Shard's also in there, but
Which other one?
it's the Wizards Wizards
First
Rule,
Rule?
not Wizards First Rule.
I have no idea.
A Frugal Wizards.
Oh, Frugal Wizard, the Secret Project. Yeah.
So I'm finishing all the secret projects.
I feel good about my side of the bet. However,
Oh, you should be scared.
I feel great.
I basically started yesterday,
Yep.
and I'm a fourth of the way through Way of Kings.
Let's record all month. I'm going to take up all your time. This is going to be a real long recording today. Okay, we're spending our time here.
So yeah, I will make updates on Instagram.
But this will be out
screenshots
toward the end
and
of the month. So this is coming out end of October.
So they get to laugh at us post talk.
Yes, in a couple of days this will be released. Actually, tomorrow is probably the live if you're watching this now. So
Oh.
just because of when this is
Fair
being
enough.
posted.
You'll see if I did it or not.
Exactly. Now, Name of the Wind.
Yep.
This was not just a super huge hit when it first came out, but it was his debut novel, which makes it all the more impressive. And it took him 14 years to make. So the thing with this taking 14 years, the thing with this being his debut novel, can you at least say, before we get into any of your negative opinions, my negative opinions, what the book is about and who would actually like the book?
Sure. Generally, this is a story that takes place. If you've read Empire of Silence, similar story structure, where our main character Quoth is the owner of an inn/tavern, and through circumstance is regaling the tales of his youth, and that's this novel. And it in those stories, it's kind of when he was young, when he went to the university, and I won't give anything further than that, but that's back at the book level. Generally, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Academia, little bit of on the streets, fighting, all that stuff. Coming of age story.
Yeah, it definitely has that academia trope if you like that. And Empire of Silence is a great similarity, a book to go, hey, if you liked Empire of Silence, which you did, so it's not a one-for-one, but it has a similar structure to Empire of Silence with that retelling of a story when the main character was younger. And
there is an actual, is it a framed narrative?
Yes,
I believe.
That's it, framed narrative.
Framed narrative.
And just to give the paragraph of what happens when older Quoth, who's in his 20s, so not old Quoth, but older Quoth, is giving his tale to this chronicler, to this person who's getting a story. This is what he does to set up his story. He says this: I have stolen princesses back from sleeping barrow kings. I burned down the town of Trebon. I have spent the night with Felurian and left with both my sanity and my life. I was expelled from the university at a younger age than most people were allowed in. I tread paths by moonlight the others fear to speak of during the day. I have talked to gods, loved women, and written songs that make the minstrels weep. You may have heard of me. And it's called The King Killer because clearly
he's killed a king.
He's killed a king.
At some point, that's not a spoiler. That's the title of the book.
Very much so. And just to give, this is the modern day Quoth is then telling the story and journeying from there. That's the setup. Yep. That's what the book is promising you. Then you'll get school stuff and lots of that. So you said who would love it. I think one category of person we can't miss out on here is if you love music. If you are musically inclined,
you'll at least appreciate this, being that it is the best. It is the best example of writing the experience of playing music and the experience of it. Nothing better. Absolutely floored me. Absolutely floored me. Still on the reread. Loved it.
And so if you do love music, this could be for you. And also the movie /play first, Cyrano de Bergerac. Cyrano de Bergerac was the play/film that Patrick Rothfuss saw and went, holy crap, why has nobody ever made a fantasy book like that? So big inspiration there if you know how that goes. I won't give anything more than that because it gets into spoiler territory, but Cyrano de Bergerac. So what did others think, Rich? I have some stuff here. First off, online, you will see this book by other booktubers, by Goodreads itself. Generally very positive, 4.5 plus on Goodreads. People tend to love this book. The person on our team here is Mike at Mike's Book Reviews. Mike's our man right there. He has the correct opinion on this book if you want to go see his video as well.
This was one of the first video that I saw on Mike's Book Reviews because
You hated it that much? You looked
really early on into my reading modern
fantasy,
renewed reading journey. I think this was like third or fourth, fifth book after Stormlight stuff. And I hated it, and everyone else seemed to love it. And I was looking at YouTube trying to find somebody else. Like, am I crazy?
Yeah.
And I came across Mike's Book Reviews.
And that's where he became your favorite booktuber.
No, it's still Bookborn.
I try to get you
I like Mike, though. He's good.
He's great.
He's great. Bookborn is just built different.
Bookborn's great
She's
as well.
Smarter and better than us, and I have to acknowledge that.
Most are, though.
True.
Most are.
But she's better than all of us, not just us in particular.
Right. You'd also say, hey, compare her to someone else.
She is better than Mike's. She
Hey,
is better than Mike.
I just want to timestamp this to send this clip to Mike.
Go ahead, Mike. Sorry, Bookborn's better than you.
So that's some opinions out there. You will see a lot of people loving Name of the Wind. Maybe you're here to watch and also agree with us and go, yeah, why did they hate it? I also hate it. Maybe you're watching going, why the hell did we hate this book? It's one of your favorites. We'll give full context of why, but want to also give some of our patrons' thoughts. This was our Patreon book club of the month, where we talk every month in our Patreon Discord. People vote for a book, select it. And I want to give a shout out today to, you know what? Our admin, Salty, Caleb. And this is his favorite book of all. I shouldn't say that. It's one of his favorite books. It's the reason he got married. So it's a very special book to him. So I want to shout you out. And also Curtis for being a patron for over a year.
Damn,
Holy Curtis, you are the man. So
he is stuck with us.
He hasn't read Name of the Wind, so he probably won't see this. But Curtis, you're great. Community's great.
Well, shout out.
Yeah. So Salty loves this. Is part of the reason he got married. Cuban, shout out to Cuban, also loved it. And what they loved about it is that it's this coming of age story. They could relate to some of the struggle here and the relation and how this, not just how the story was told, but reflecting on what it means to retell a tale. So a lot of that they loved about it. And there are some things I'll give them credit for. And there's something about this book I will give high praise. Because it just misses the mark on that. Okay. Anyways, now I also have to say we have Kendall, Dump Truck, and others said it lacks tension and they really hated the book. Then others like Emily and Murdy were very neutral. So it was a very divisive book club where some people loved it, some hated it, and others were middlings. Just going, oh, yeah, it's mid.
It was surprising.
Very surprising. Now, Rich, the important part. Still spoiler-free here, and long spoiler-free section for Name of the Wind. We had to set it up. What is your Rambler rating out of 5 stars?
Out of 5 stars, my official Rambler rating is a 2.25.
Very disappointed.
Very disappointed.
Wow.
I gotta say, I think that's generous for all the shit I've been throwing at this book.
Yeah.
I think that's generous.
It looks generous because I gave this book a 2-star out of 5 stars. I gave it lower than you.
You're a bigger hater than me.
I would say this book is flawed. I would put the rating on this as saying there's just so much to it that there's moments I'll say, but overall I have to give it a 2-star. I have to.
I give it the edge of there's some factors that I'm really disappointed with it.
Yeah.
But because so many other people like it and I see why, it's hard for me to particularly say flawed as a book.
You see,
it functions, but I don't like it.
I definitely, when I rate things, just full warnings. Well, I don't ever consider what the public thinks. Like if I know other people love it, I'll just go straight up, hey, this is how I feel about it. I won't factor in.
I'm looking at, I understand why this works for other people.
Same, yeah.
As a book, when talking like flawed book, means like something broken.
Yeah, there is.
Fair enough.
I will say that. We'll talk about it. So, what did you think the best category was and the worst category?
Oh, by far the Prose.
That was your favorite?
5 stars.
Great.
And caveat here.
Yeah.
A lot of it, all of it's really good to great. Some maybe cringy lines, like not all of it floored me, but a couple chapters did.
Got it.
Particularly one in particular, and another scene knocked me out of the park.
Yeah.
And so that's why I give it the score.
Great. Yeah, Prose is great, and I would say my favorite category might be the world building.
That's my second second favorite.
The world is really great in this book, and we'll talk about that. But the worst category, Rich. What's the bottom strung before we go into spoilers? What was the worst one?
I got a tie.
Me too.
Between characters and emotional impact.
Ah, okay. That was yours? Characters emotional. Mine is between characters and thought-provokingness. The message and themes.
That's fair because I'm real close.
Okay.
Yeah. Quick pause from the Name of the Wind video to give you the name of our sponsor.
Ooh.
Displate.
Hey.
If you've been with us a while, you know what they are. Premium metal posters that replace your crappy paper college ones. They go up on the wall easy. Sticker to protect your paint. Magnet on there. Then pop your Displate on. Really easy to make it level, swap in and out different versions. It's great.
You could have your Lord of the Rings and Sauron, or for you demons out there, you could actually get a Name of the Wind poster. Disgusting. But you could get all sorts of sci-fi fantasy stuff. This plate is giving a discount code with the code 2ToRamble at checkout to get anywhere from 22 all the way up to 33% off using that code. It supports us on the channel, gets you a cool disc plate, and it allows them to continue sponsoring us. We appreciate them every time. We love this kind of stuff. We'll let you guys get back to the episode where we trash Name of the Wind.
All right.
Strap in.
We about done with spoiler free?
Give them the spoiler warning.
All right. Spoiler warning now. Get out of here or stay if you don't care because garbage book. So who cares? We spoil it.
Okay, we got to be spoilers. Here we go. Emotional impact. Would you give it? Sorry, before I even say emotional impact, I want to do a good job here. We need to tackle these and get. I'm going to try to get down to. I'm going to Socrates you. I'm going to why you a lot to try to get down to the core of why this book is disliked. Because there's a lot of people out there watching going, Rich, how the hell did you give it that low of a score? And they're ignoring me because they don't care about my score. But they're going, Rich, how did you give it that low of a score?
Yeah.
Emotional impact. What is it out of 5 stars?
Give it a 2.
2 star?
2 star. Flawed.
Me too. 2 star. Flawed.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Ultimately, didn't connect and made me angry. So, there.
I strangely want to start with prose.
Fair enough.
The prose,
Get the good stuff out
not
of the
prose
way.
as in the dialogue, but the good.
Okay.
No. Like the good things about the emotional impact, because there is a scene that connected with you deeply. Want to give it the credit first and then undercut it.
Yeah, that's
so what
hard.
What was? It's a 2 star because something did hit you in this book.
I believe it is chapter 47 or 50.
I think it was 55-6, something like that.
56.
People will know the scene.
People know
that
the
you're
scene.
referring to.
So it is. So there's 2 scenes. One's earlier. The one that I would say is probably one of the best chapters I've ever read is chapter where Quoth goes in to get his silver pipes to be able to play at these different taverns.
Right.
And he has to perform in front of this audience. And he goes up on stage and starts doing this whole performance. And one, just generally on how it is described when playing music and the interactions between him and the audience and the different levels of focus, how the music is affecting people. Beautiful. And then even further, the level of tension is just rises so high when someone messes with him and snaps one of his lute strings. And now
Ambrose, his antagonist there. Yeah.
Having to play this incredibly complicated piece with less strings and now having to do an ad hoc change and make on-the-fly an improvisation for this complex song, and then also trusting the audience to find a dual singer for him to play her part. Everything on how that interacts, the level of trust that you have to have with the music, the audience, your fellow performers, gorgeous. How it's described blew me away. I was floored. I loved it. I think I loved it just as much the second time. It's just so well written.
So much so that Rich almost bought a lute from the Ren Fair.
Almost.
You're this close.
This close.
Instead, you got a mug with a Wheel of Time quote. So
yeah. Oh, I should get it.
Next episode.
Next episode.
Do you think that the emotions he was going for, so when we rate emotional impact, we're going for our outward reaction? Did we cheer? Did we cry? Were we tense? That emotion, the emotional scenes and the beats in here in this book, what do you think he's going for? Is he going for, with the music, he wants you to feel the music, to feel the love story, to feel...
Yeah. Here's the thing. He is realized correctly when writing music. Just writing the lyrics and then describing kind of how it sounds like is not how you experience music, and it doesn't work in written format very well. Because when ultimately you're reading it on a page of just lines of the lyrics, it can be good poetry, but that's about all it is. It doesn't give you the feeling of music. Patrick Ruffus did the right thing. If he doesn't give you the lyrics, or at least not all of them, but he gives you enough tied along with the movements and how it's supposed to make you feel. And his apt descriptions are just so perfect. He gets across the feeling of music. That's amazing. That is an amazing feat to be able to do.
Yeah. A lot of my prose, and sorry, I'll stop using the word prose because it will sound like Prose. I mean Pros. The prose and good things about the emotional impact. have mostly to do with the music, where even Quoth's scenes where he both interacts with others as well, and he asks for someone's loot, but he knows in his head going, oh, that's not a thing you do for a musician.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Ruffus clearly has some musical background. I don't at all, but I could see in Quoth's head how much he cares about music and cares about words themselves. There's that middle point where he tears out the pages of describing Denna. We'll get into all character stuff, but you see Quoth's, as much as I'm going to complain about Quoth, when it comes to the music stuff, I was constantly going, wow, that either emotionally pulls you in a way. There's scenes when it comes to his lute, how it is played, and there was a scene that actually made me chuckle too. The scene with him and Eldon, and when he was first following Eldon, the crazy master, and most stories go, you follow them, and he jumps off I should set the scene up better, where he's following his teacher Eldon and trying to hold back from asking too many questions. He's new at this university, and he wants to excel. He wants to learn the name of the wind. That's the point of the book. One of the points of the books is he's trying to learn the name of the wind, and as he's doing so, he's following this one master, Eldon, and Eldon tells him, oh, jump off. No, jump off. That's what I'm telling you is your master. And then our main character thinks, he's testing me. Jumps off, falls, breaks himself. Just a fun. I laughed and I went, okay, I can't give it that bad emotional impact. It made me laugh here, made me care here. So prefacing that with, you can't say it was awful. There were scenes that hit you. There were scenes that connected.
Exactly. That's why it's not a 1.
Yes.
Really it.
And the one thing that kept me going early on, the mystery behind why the Chandrian killed his parents and sung the wrong songs, everything I liked about this had to do with mystery in the songs. I'm going, okay, what's going on here? I didn't like the payoff at all, but I like the setup. I like that. I'm going, oh, okay, okay. Now, what'd you hate?
Quoth. Hate him. I hate him so much. I'm so bored with him. I don't like him. Not just, he's bad portrayed character and he has flaws. The opposite, really. He's a bad character that does not connect with readers, I don't think. At least didn't connect with me. Also, the plot. Plot is ultimately pretty darn boring with a very disappointing payoff that I finish the end and go, really? That's it? That's the ending of the book? It felt like I was robbed. I was robbed of a story that should have happened. I thought it was building to something, and it built to nothing. And ultimately, then, the message. I think the message of this story is so abysmally awful that I hated it.
So your emotion, you're pulling the other categories going, hey, I didn't like the characters, didn't like the plot, didn't like thought-provoking. There's just everything that goes down that line you didn't like at all.
It got a negative emotional reaction from me.
Yeah.
And when on a reflection going, did I like any character? I can think of one side character that I liked well enough, but had maybe half a chapter of page time.
Who was it?
The little girl that he meets when he's playing on the rooftop.
Oh.
The little homeless woman.
She's in there more than once, but yeah.
Yeah.
She's in there a couple times.
But total, like, half
she's
page,
there
I
at the
guess.
end as well,
Yeah,
getting him
kinda,
through the underground. Yeah, she's there.
I liked her well enough.
Yeah.
Only character I'll say positive things, but cool character.
I like the character
Other than
that went hush hush, or what hush hush. He was fun.
I guess.
He was fun. It was good on the audiobook. But yes, with emotional impact, I guess we'll get more. I'll ask you more whys and get to that when we talk about characters, the other categories.
For
I think
you,
the main thing.
What was was the big negative for you in emotional?
Flatly said, and I guess we'll elaborate. I promise the rest of this podcast to give a word: boring.
Yeah.
I think it was at its core a boring book, and the reason it was boring had to do with Quoth. And I think I will talk about in the plot section. I think there's one change he could make to make this book 10 times better. I think that if I was reading and going, I think if you do this instead of this, it changes the book. There's a couple things, but one thing for the plot that really frustrated me, but I was just bored. And the main thing I was bored, I think the pacing and how long things were drawn out. The academy was a long time. I couldn't tell you much about the professors. And a thing that I guess bothered me too was a lot of the times he was throwing out and saying in the narrative, I'll just put this in how emotionally felt. He was putting a lot of the time saying, look how not trite the story is. Look, hey, a typical story would do this. Look, he'll say that in the narrative. Quoth will talk about, this isn't like your typical story. And then do typical story thing where Denna walks into Quoth and other girl putting coat on Quoth, and then creates a miscommunication type trope where it just constantly said to itself, look, I'm different from other stories. And then one of those instances of where it says I'm different from other stories says, look, it's not an actual dragon, it's a lizard. And then there's several chapters about this really uninteresting lizard at the end. And I think it really gets uninteresting to me because I'm feeling I did not read this book for a lizard action scene at the end.
And even then, the action scene was boring.
That's the thing.
It was a boring action scene.
I was not set up for that at all. Yeah. So it felt boring, and I think I want to go for emotional impact because I think we can't get too deep into it until we go to the other stuff.
Fair enough.
I'll end it on emotional impact with this of I cringed at the book. I physically cringed reading this book, and it's exactly from this line, which I want to talk about in our thought-provoking section, and then I'll read this line off, okay?
Okay.
Thought-provoking, messages and themes. What'd you give this out of 5 stars?
I'm honestly tempted to lower it even further, but I have it at a 2.25.
I have it at 1.5 stars. I gotta say it's bad.
You may. Who knows? You may make me, the Name of the Wind hater, lower his score even further. Because am I being too generous to this book?
Do you want me to start generous or start negative? You tell me.
Start generous, then we go negative.
There's something I love about this book and its thought. I give it a 1.5. There's something I love about the message here.
Okay.
The very end chapter with Bast, who is his fae companion, Quoth, in his older age. Bast has this last chapter / epilogue that touches on this message, and I get why people love it. Bast pushes and threatens the chronicler, saying, hey, don't let Quoth focus on the bad times. Let Quoth focus on the good times, because the stories you tell yourselves is who you become. The stories that you tell yourself is your own self-perception. It's who he's becoming the innkeeper. He's no longer Quoth the Great. I have the quote here.
Oh yeah, he said, you used. Oh well, I could read
quote.
It actually.
The quote is, it's like everyone tells a story about themselves inside their own head, always, all the time. That story makes you what you are. We build ourselves out of that story. So people saw him as an innkeeper a year ago. He sees himself as an innkeeper now. So that message to me, I'm going, okay. Encapsulating that of if Quoth at the very last chapter being a man waiting to die, I like the theme going of, oh my goodness, okay, this man waiting to die, he's telling himself that the way he's perceiving himself is who he's becoming. It's a perpetual cycle that you can feel depressed. And just that message there of also the message of telling a story and fabricating what fiction and truth, maybe if you even tell yourself a lie, you'll believe the lie. Just the way it's touching at stories, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's a good message. I like the theme there.
I agree with you.
Caveat, major caveat is with that message, it never addresses the scene that we're going to talk about here, but also I think it incorrectly encapsulates that message for Quoth. Where the story that Quoth is telling himself of him, I guess Bast's message at the end there is also saying Quoth, when there's a line here, I didn't write down the exact line, but yes, here it is. He says to Bast, like, hey, it's good, keep letting Quoth talk about those good times, like battles and with women, etc., etc. But the scenes that Bast is telling him to focus that are good things about his past, and the scenes that he wants Quoth to come back, young Quoth was not a good person. The scenes of his past that you want that Quoth to come back, the story you tell yourself is who you are, focus on the good things. The problem is the message about those good things that are being encapsulated are not virtuous, are not good. So if Bast was saying that about scenes in Quoth's story, and Quoth was a person who he wanted to become again, it's looking at this Quoth character at the end, a man waiting to die, and he's telling these grand stories of his past. But those grand stories of his past, he was a bad person then, and I don't get it yet. And let's talk about that. Do you want to talk about the scene? This is why the message to me is awful.
I will read it. This is one aspect, and to be fair, this is maybe not the largest, but it's, I think, the most impactful part about this book is the love story, or not even a love story, but more of, how would you put it?
A relationship.
The relationship between Quoth and Denna. It's a large part of this book. It seems to be the thing that Quoth cares most about. And here's one of the ending chapters of not just describing the scene, like it is said with implying that older Quoth agrees with the message that younger Quoth is thinking. This is kind of the message of a book.
I've reread this chapter several times and the following chapters.
I don't know how else to interpret this.
Do you want me to set the scene up for you? You read the quote?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the scene set up here is younger Quoth is seeing Denna again, and Denna always has new boyfriends, new lovers with her all the time. And he's telling about how he always runs into these boyfriends, and they have an underlying jealousy of Quoth because Quoth is there. And there's this back and forth he has with his love interest with Denna's boyfriends. And this is Quoth's inner monologue about what he thinks about Denna's boyfriends versus him.
Yeah. I have known her longer, my smile said. True, you have been inside the circle of her arms, tasted her mouth, felt the warmth of her. And that is something I have never had. But there is a part of her that is only for me. You cannot touch it, no matter how hard you might try. And after she has left you, I will still be here, making her laugh, my light shining in her. I will still be here long after she has forgotten your name. Ugh! Gross and cringe.
To double down on that, there's the next page has where his friends are essentially saying to him, why don't you pursue her? Why don't you ask her out? You should do this. And Quoth in his monologue and his internal dialogue is saying they don't understand Denna like he does. And he uses this analogy here and says, Denna is a wild thing, like a hind or a summer storm. If a storm blows down your house or breaks a tree, you don't say the storm was mean. It was cruel. It acted according to its nature, and something unfortunately was hurt. The same is true of Denna. A hind is and then he said, his friend Simon asked, what's a hind? He says, a hind is a female deer, a wild deer. Do you know how much good it does to chase a wild thing? None. It works against you. It startles the hind away. All you can do is stay gently where you are and hope in time that the hind will come to you. Implying that he's waiting for Denna to come to him. And not just saying that.
Yeah.
So waiting for Denna to come to him. And what is so backwards about that? Why don't you like that message about the story? And caveat here too, we are interpreting it as if that is the message, and for several reasons. But go ahead and give your thoughts.
Talking about this as it is the message we are supposed to take away, that this is a virtuous moment. It is a good moment, not necessarily one of his mistakes. That's how I read it, and I tried to figure out if it's read a different way. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
So, on a first level, there is something gross about how he describes his friendship-ish with Denna of, like, I own something part of her that she's never kind of expressed, like
a weird ownership.
Of her.
Yeah.
She has expressed nothing of the sort, really. Like, they're not a relationship, not shown at all. It's a weird sense of pride over not being in a relationship with her. It's weird. So overall, that part, cringe and a little bit self-delusional simp behavior. Then there's the other level of that he shouldn't pursue her, that her decisions are a wild thing. It's not really up to her. One, in a basic level, if you don't like how someone is treating you, whether, and again, talk about it later, I don't think Denna is particularly treating him wrong. But
no, I don't think Denna's in the wrong at all here. Is the problem. Yeah.
I am confused on one specific plot element
on
whether it is.
Okay.
But overall, Denna's not in the wrong here. But if Quoth is seeing her as cruel, of like, oh, she is not reciprocating my feelings and she's doing things that hurts me.
Mm-hmm.
Walk away. Walk away. Don't deal with it. Like, either walk away or confront it and say, hey, Denna, I like you. Will you go out with me? There you go. And she says yes, cool. Says no, cool. Walk away. You don't need to put yourself in a toxic relationship. That is your choice, not theirs.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
We completely agree
So
on that.
It takes away, there's a weird sense of ownership, and also he takes away a bit of her agency.
Mhm.
It's not her fault.
She's a wild thing.
She's a wild thing. She just is. No, she's a person doing things. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't, but she's doing stuff. She's not this weird animal. No. A plot element that I'm curious about, and I'm wondering if this is part of it, and this is my confusion on Denna itself. We're not in her POV, so of course we don't know too much about her. But I think it's fairly clear from the story that she is in a tough bind. She is in a way similar to Quoth, and there's some terrible stuff going on in her past and her terrible situation. And a way she is dealing with it is manipulating men that are very attracted to her. And she uses men to get something and get her way. And that when men, like, she allows men to give her things, whatever it is, but when they take it too far, she drops them. That's kind of my interpretation of it. I'm pretty sure that's what's happening. But again, Quoth's perspective could be wrong. Second book, who knows? The question is she genuine with her friendly affection, or even more than friendly affection and hints at Quoth, or is she doing that to manipulate him? And when she invites Quoth over and is trying to include him and like seek him out, say, hey, come meet me, and she's with her boyfriend, there's this weird thing of she knows he has feelings for her and she's deliberately inviting her boyfriend along with it. Is there some kind of manipulation game that she's doing with him? I don't know. That's kind of how I was thinking it was going. That maybe that would be her flaw, is she's manipulating men. Is she manipulating Quoth as well? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on Denna is whatever her motivation is almost negligible to the purpose and to the message here. Not to discount that.
Oh yeah,
as part of the story.
It was just a question. It's ultimately irrelevant to Quoth's decisions about
the problem
Denna.
is Denna, regardless of what her actions are, it's Quoth's. It is Quoth's response and his own agency that's the problem, because Denna is obviously flirting with him so many times. I believe she was in relationships, not in relationships, in and out at several different times with Quoth. And Quoth constantly views her in this one way. And when she would get out of a relationship, Quoth says he would be the one to console her, like the friend. And he would be there for her before she was on to the next guy. So there were opportunity between relationships. It didn't have to be a homewrecker at all. It's not that kind of situation. The problem with Quoth, it's the pride and arrogance to think he's better than all these other guys, which sure, I'm sure there's these pigs out there. Yes. As he says, I'm not going to be like one of those cows who asks her out and is just there for one thing from Denna. Okay. I'm sure there's bad guys out there. Problem being that he has such pride and arrogance in how he views Denna. He's almost above even asking her out because he is not so lowly to do so. And that's a backwards message to do. You're exactly right. The message there should be get over your pride and arrogance, approach failure, be okay with conflict and failure. And if she rejects you, that'll be tough. That'll be tough.
Then you make the decision of, do you want to stay friends or that's too hard? Leave.
It's that he takes away all agency. Like, look, she's this wild thing. I don't have to do this on my own and ask her out and let my feelings be known. It's just such a backwards way of approaching that relationship. Because I don't mean to disregard. I'm sure people listening to have had people in the friend zone and these relationships where somebody's in a relationship, but you really like them, can't say anything. But there's more. You have a thought there? Yeah.
Just want to point out the idea of the friend zone.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it is a way to cast away responsibility. That if you right now are in the friend zone, that's on you. That you're not stuck there. You can leave at any time. You're not trapped. If the relationship you have with someone is not satisfactory to you, you are friends, you want something more, they don't.
Yeah.
You have full authority all the responsibility to just leave.
And the reason it's called a friend zone because you feel in a zone where you want to get out of it. versus someone that's your friend. You just call them a friend.
Yeah.
It's called the friend
Because
zone.
ultimately,
The zone is
you're
you
not-
feel trapped because I want this, but I can't get it, so I have to stay friend, rather than you feel that
It's slimy.
yeah.
Trying to stay friends, and ultimately you're there just to
Waiting.
hopefully pick up
Hopefully-
sloppy seconds.
In that simp way, the word simp or whatever the term you would use here of Quoth almost in a way expects the more he does good things, consoles her between relationships, the more she owes him.
Yeah.
Is such a freaking twisted way of looking at like I am now owed this because I am doing good things for her and waiting to swoop in, which is why I just have to give this bad for the overall message. I give it a little bit of credit because the story aspect of this and how I think it especially with Bass at the end has that way of looking at things, but Quoth's core message there and how we take it especially is highlighted for a couple of reasons why we think this is interpretation, why I do too. Mm-hmm. One is present day Quoth, the 20-whatever-year-old Quoth, looks back at his 15-year-old self and constantly interrupts the story and says things, hey, if you don't know like what it's like being poor, if you don't know like it's playing music, gives these monologues to explain.
Here's why I was arrogant. Here's why I was prideful.
Empire Silence does that with things.
Yeah.
But with this, Quoth doesn't correct himself. There's no back and forth. The conversation between Quoth and his friend Simon afterwards makes it look as if Quoth is in the right. His friends bring up an objection to Quoth saying, why don't you pursue her, being us?
Yeah.
And Patrick Rothfuss writes it in the way to show, hey, this is why he shouldn't pursue her. That's the way it is written, and that's the way I interpret it, especially because part of the inspiration is Cyrano de Bergerac, movie I quite like, that does this way better. It's also not a one-to-one.
That movie more shows it's a tragedy, but also wrong. I think it ultimately touches on the correct lesson. You know what I mean?
And the character Cyrano de Bergerac himself is deformed in a way, and just it's so interesting how they. I don't want to talk. We can have a movie discussion on Cyrano de Bergerac.
It's a fun one.
It's a fun one.
Ultimately, it shows the flaws.
I also
it's
don't
not
want to
a
spoil it
virtue.
too much. In case people want to go watch Cyrano de Bergerac, if you've read Name with the Wind, do check it out. Whether you hated or loved it, we really liked Cyrano de Bergerac, and even though hating Name with the Wind. So that's all being said. So when looking at Quoth, this pride, this arrogance is almost highlighted. Not almost. It is highlighted as a virtue to me. That's how I interpret it. And going, that's a bad message. Yeah, that should not be projected. That's not how you should go about. And a lot of people will say, hey, it's 15-year-old Quoth. Of course, it's this 15-year-old kid. Didn't you feel like that? I would even say the relation part of relating to Quoth as a character of how he viewed Denna, I can't even relate to this obsession ownership part of how he viewed Denna. I can totally understand the, hey, you're in the friend zone, you want to get out of it, that classic stuff of, I like this girl, can't ask her out. It's worse than that for
It's
Quoth.
not even it should be cowardice, but it's not. Like, generally, friend zone, like being stuck in the friend zone is a combination. It's mostly cowardice. It's either cowardice to ask or cowardice to leave. It's one of those two. Sorry. In Quoth's situation, maybe it's pride hiding.
I think so.
Pride hiding
I think
the cowardice. That's probably it. But the pride thing is the thing that's front and center. Yeah,
I would say too. Just to throw on my girlfriend, I read her this the cringe page part. I read her it to get her reaction.
Yeah.
Hates him. she said, I can't quote her exactly.
Not YouTuber friendly?
No, not can't, because I'll butcher the word. She'll be like, no, I didn't say that. I said I hated him more. So I won't make it look, so I'll say this. She said that he's delusional. That's one of the words she used.
Yeah.
And she said he's a fucking, no, she didn't. So she's great. I love her. And so she was describing Quoth in a similar way. Of course, I only gave her that page and gave her my interpretation. Mm-hmm. So completely biased if I was going, hey, this is what, I'll read you this page, give you how I interpreted the book. And she agreed, but there's plenty of people who are watching that will agree, disagree. This is the biggest thing to comment about. What do you think about this? Because the people that love Name of the Wind, I feel interpreted it differently. They had to have, because they saw something else that we didn't see. And a lot of people in the Patreon book club that were talking about it didn't bother them as much because they viewed him as a 15-year-old kid.
Yeah.
They viewed it and went, I think that's a flaw. I think this, but we're viewing it as based on reasons given that it's part of the message of the book, is the big message of the book. So that's the big thing on Thought Provoking. I have to give it the 1.5. I understand where yours is. You keeping it there? You're promoting this.
I like how we're on board with these things.
What's that going down to? Oh.
1.5.
Yeah.
When you're right, you're right. I'm always down to lower Name of the Wind.
And we didn't even get down to characters.
No.
So,
oh, God, no.
So, I want to end it with one thing so Salty, who loved the book and reason he got married to his wife. So to give the other side of this, to give the other side of this, Salty was saying part of that message of the stories are told to people, but the real source is something completely mundane and the variation of the truth. He loved the aspect that as the story was told, it's not as grand as you think it is. The real thing is sometimes not as interesting, which is interesting to him.
Yeah, to me, then why are we reading it? It's kind of boring. Make it in some way interesting then. That's kind of my thing is, Wheel of Time. I'm sorry I bring it back to it every time, but it does that exact point. Like a big part of Robert Jordan's whole thing, the whole Wheel of Time is the idea of how information changes and how does information change over time and distance.
Yep.
Constantly of something happens and then we get to see a perspective on the other side, or even just 2 towns over, how the story has changed. Or we get to see a piece of history and how is that warped over time to, oh, wow, this entire culture is the opposite of what it used to be over different, slight changes of misunderstandings and, a rash decision made. And, wow, look at how the culture changes. So it does it does the exact same thing of, hey, look at how stories can change over time and distance.
Yeah.
And way better.
I haven't finished Wheel of Time, so I can't give.
Thing is, you've read the book where I think it has one of the clearer examples of it.
Book 1 to 4. Yeah.
Book 4.
Yeah, book 4.
Gotta admit, it's better than this.
As a book?
No, that element.
Oh, that element. Okay, I understand.
That it shows the difference of how stories and how
you're not going to get me loving Wheel of Time. I'm not giving Wheel of Time praise. You're never going to get it. I hate it. I hate Wheel of Time. Just because we're allies on this does not mean we're friends. God damn it!
I'm gonna get you one day. I'm gonna sneak it in there.
A book that I hate and you go, come on, it's got to be better.
Come on.
Characters.
Okay.
What'd you give characters out of 5 stars?
Initially gave it a 2.
2 stars?
2 stars.
I gave this also 1.5 stars. Bad.
I don't connect with anything. At the end of this book, I was like, man, I don't care to read about any of these characters.
The main
I'm not
one,
interested.
We have to go with Quoth first.
Yeah.
So he's the reason you would love or hate the characters here. Because other ones are side characters. I can't remember much of them.
That's a big problem for me.
Teacher here, this here.
A lot of the side characters I thought were real surface level.
Archetypal.
Way worse than I would expect for this level of author and book. Where I'm thinking of other first-time novelists or authors early on in their career that I think do a way better job of getting memorable side characters that feel more alive rather than just, bullet point of, oh, that's the mean teacher that's mean to our main character cause. Why not? The bully noble character. Why is he bully noble? Because he's a bully noble. That's about it. Is there anything else to him? Does he have any other qualities? Is there a quirk? Is there a voice?
There's a scene there why they're angry at each other, but I will agree with you on this. If you guys want a fantastic academia book, The Will of the Many has fantastic side characters.
Oh, yeah. Will of the Many does it way better.
Yes.
I think, honestly, just it's a better book.
Will of the Many? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Way better. It does the academia stuff, but also interesting plot and twists.
The main character mostly has even though he's not the most magnetic
character,
but he has a good message at the end. There's a good his struggle is good, but won't again.
It's also interesting. There's some cool poignant moments that got to me. It's
a lovely book. But with Quoth, let's start with Quoth, and I'm going to ask you a couple questions. We'll get to why you hate the character. It's kind of clear already. A couple questions. First, do you think that Quoth is a self-insert character from Patrick Rothfuss?
Yes.
What makes you think that?
He's basically good at everything. He's kind of a Gary Stu. A big problem with him as a character is that nearly all of his problems, even the ones that maybe you could say, oh, they're his pride being his main fault and failure. And it actually is a lesson for him to overcome. I would say most of the flaws and problems from this book are all external problems. That it is just a woe is me, the world is mean to Quoth. And that's it. And that Quoth is perfect. Quoth is great. He's genius. He's super kind. He's the best at everything he does instantly.
Right, his pride doesn't even get put in his way as a flaw because it's not a flaw to be overcome. Because even throughout the book.
Give an example of the teaching moment where the mean teacher is whatever his name. Hem. Is trying to pull one over on Quoth, go like, well, haha, if you think you're so smart, why don't you teach the class? And Quoth, in his pride and arrogance, does this whole thing and slightly like gives the teacher a hot foot, like warms their foot or burns their foot slightly, but it doesn't really do much. But his pride in trying to show off is what got him into trouble and got whipped at school. To me, I'm going, no, it's the asshole teacher. It's not him. And also, Quoth didn't really do anything wrong. Like, on letter of the law, like, the teacher asked for him to do something, had full permission up to the point, like, oh, it was his arrogance. Not really. It's the teacher's fault. It's not his. And all the other instances where, oh, Quoth would get along better, he would solve his bully problem if he just sucked it up and, bent the knee and just gave in to the bully's, beratings, and he just shut up. That's not pride. That's not just, like, the bully shouldn't bully. I'm not victim blaming Quoth. I mean, the bully's an asshole and treating him poorly. Should I say, oh, it's Quoth's pride that the bully keeps harassing him? No. So, in what sense that is Quoth's pride a flaw in this book or causes any of his problems?
I think that's why it's not the lesson at the end, because it's not addressed enough to go, hey, he needs to overcome this. Where I think you're exactly right, where he's a passive character.
Yeah.
Kendall from our Patreon said this too. That's why she really disliked Quoth, where things happening to him causing the world's being mean to him. Denna is the wild thing that can't be tamed and gotta wait for her to come to him. It's the constant theme of things have to happen to Quoth instead of him creating these actions. Mm-hmm. So that's what it seems to come down to. And I have a clip here from Patrick Rothfuss who, after he says this clip, I'm curious what you think on what he says here. Now, big thing is this is him asking this. That's why I asked you the question. This is an interview asked Patrick Rothfuss the question of, is Quoth a self-insert character, essentially? And this is what his reaction and his response is.
Fair enough.
All right, Pat, here you go.
See from a slightly different direction. There's been a fair amount of speculation as to how much of me there is in Quoth. I think generally it's a complicated question because it's easy to see that I have some of the same opinions or he has some of the same opinions. I think the main characteristic that we share is curiosity. He is very curious about all of these things. I'm very curious. You can't sit me down in front of someone or something and I want to figure out about it. I want to find out how it works. I want to hear interesting stories about it. In that way, we're very similar. What a lot of people don't realize is that I've been effectively roommates with Quoth for 14 years now. Yep. Imagine method acting apart for 14 years because I'm constantly behind his eyes and I'm talking like him. I'm writing as if I were him and I'm thinking as if I were him. So it's not just me leaking into his character. After all this time, I've been wearing his skin for so long, I think it's fair to assume that I've soaked up some of his personality traits, which is more than slightly creepy if you think about it.
We can pause it.
Especially considering the sort of person that he is.
Yep, there we go. So,
Interesting.
what did you think about that clip from him, of him talking about, is this a self-insert character?
Again, a mixed bag, maybe. It sounds like the element that like just from the clip, he's attached to the curiosity element of Quoth, which I guess is the most admirable part about him. Is he's a curious guy. Like, it's
or the schooling of went to school for 9 years. Quoth is in school this whole time, right?
Yeah. Now there is something less admirable or less interesting about a very curious character that can just, like, they hear it once and they immediately absorb it, and like kind of perfect memory type deal. It's like, I don't know, not as compelling for a character generally, is that they're just really smart and they pick up everything instantly. They don't have to work hard for their curiosity. It's not a challenge.
It's definitely not presented as a flaw. It's just a part of his personality.
Yeah, it just makes it boring
Gotcha.
for a character element and plot structure. But it's not a negative thing, no.
I think.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think from that clip of the self-insert portion, I'm curious because he said two big things I point out there. He said both they share some of the same opinions, which does that go into our thought-provoking message? I don't know.
Yeah.
What are the opinions they share? The Quoth bleeding into him bleeding into Quoth, him becoming the character, saying, hey, it's also creepy in a way because of who Quoth is. So he's saying two different things. I'm curious what Pat thinks when he wrote this book of what qualities to emulate from Quoth and what were bad things, what were his opinions, what was he trying to get across. Because he loves Cyrano de Bergerac and he was getting across that relationship with Quoth and Denna, I think maybe that's part of where his opinions are coming out of, and his thought process on things, and that bleeds through this character. It's his debut novel, and I think it's very typical for a debut author to write what you know. What he knows is schooling. What he knows is relationships in his life. I'm not going to conjecture about anything that's happened, but I'm just saying that with Quoth's character, I could see how he writes Quoth. Quoth becomes him, and he kind of uses from his experience to go, okay, this element, how much of it is fiction? Is it based on stuff? Who knows? Again, we're taking
there was actually a convention where he was, at a panel and taking questions from people.
Yeah.
And someone asked him of basically, in regards to Denna, who hurt you?
Yeah. What did he say?
He said it's complex in the sense of, he knows a Denna in his life, but it's not really exactly a wonder. It's not a
inspired.
Sort
of thing.
He's had some, but it's muddying the water enough to go, all right.
Yeah.
I don't know. It kind of gets the feeling of, is that his opinion about women in general, or
what's coming
arrogance
through there? Right. Because Quoth comes down to why I think the bad characters here. Quoth for me wasn't interesting to read. Quoth also, when we're giving our character, I should make this clear as well. Our 5-star is they are an irreplaceable character. You can't replace them with everybody else. And a 1-star is more not just replaceable, but almost incoherent.
Middle of the road, like neutral.
Replaceable. You can fill them up with anybody else. Yeah,
but necessarily not bad.
Not bad.
Yeah.
More towards the 1-star we're talking about here is incoherent character, somebody that I just can't. Whatever their traits are, whatever they are as a character, not useless in the sense of why is this character even here, but I'm asking myself, why am I following him?
Yeah.
Of all these characters, why am I following the least interesting? When at the beginning of the story, it's I killed kings, I did this. Look at these grand things that I did, and of course we're starting early on before schooling, and so it's not that he's gotten to the king killing portion. He hasn't gotten there. But
I would expect of that kind of promise, you got to give me something interesting at the end. He has to have done something noteworthy, or else why the hell are we starting the story here? I mean, it's like, well, of course he would have to tell his story from the beginning. Do we really? Like, this is an author's choice. You can
skip around.
You can skip to the interesting part. Why are we here? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, His parents were killed by mysterious godlike creatures, which
Interesting. Yeah.
Cool. Then he is alone in this city and has to survive poverty for 3 years, which the best part from second best part of the book for me. I liked that section. And then I went to school and people were mean to me. The book. The entire time.
To focus on Quoth there too, that you just touched on with the Chandrian killing the mystical creatures, Chandrian killing his parents, that was interesting. And then there was another interesting part that happened that made his motivation less interesting. And what I'm referring to is when he was going to the university in years past, he said, hey, the grief from his parents became in the back of his head. He forgot how it felt exactly, which I think is a really fascinating point to go, okay.
It's definitely accurate in the sense of, grief fades with time.
Yes, exactly that. Grief fades with time, and it made sense. Then his primary motivation with the Chandrian stuff, one of the primary motivations is, I'm curious, I want to learn the name of the wind. That curious thing of what we're talking about here, of how interesting is curiosity as a character motivation. Hermione, being a side character, being curious, I could see. The main character being curious, wanting to learn things, when I'm most curious about the Chandrian, and most of the book isn't finding out more about the Chandrian, but just going, oh, here's cool thing, here's cool thing, here's cool thing. I want to learn more and get to learning the name of the wind. He does at the end. He has that snapping moment where I'm using allomancy.
Ultimately, he doesn't even know the name of the wind. It just kind of happened to him.
He seems to meander through this world and ask these questions.
He didn't discover the name of the wind.
It discovered him, just like everything else happens to Quoth.
And even then, by the end of it, if you have a passive character of things are happening to the character,
like this and Will the Many,
it would be interesting. The main point of it would be, how does that change? How is the character affected by all these things happening?
The powers and forces around him.
Yeah. How are they pulled? What does the character change at the end of it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he changes at all. He just continues on with things that happen to him. It's like, that's a crappy thing. I'm going to figure out a way out of it. And a lot of the problems that he has a problem in one chapter, in the exact same chapter, he solves it. And it's like, all right. What tension?
It comes down to, I don't want to follow Quoth ever.
Yeah.
So I don't want to read the next book because Quoth to me is an uninteresting narrator. Now, is he an unreliable narrator? Would you say that?
I don't think so. An unreliable narrator normally implies some degree of malfeasance, of actually lying. I think, of course, Quoth is describing himself in his own point of view, so possibly Quoth is wrong. I think definitely wrong about Denna. You know, it's his POV. He doesn't have all the facts. But I don't think he's lying. And I don't think there was anything hinted or could be misconstrued in that. And if it is, he must be telling some big lies. Or even, let's say he is. Say he is an unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
It's still boring. Why did you choose to have an unreliable narrator and go, yeah, they're lying to make the story even more boring? Okay, then why am I reading it? Give me the truth then if it's interesting. Yeah, let's go into plot.
Because I don't know if you want to talk any other character, Denna, or...
We talked enough about
Denna.
Denna's
Ambrose, the teachers. Fine. I think our general opinion, just no other side character stood out as interesting. And it's not a fact of what is there is even bad with the side characters. It's the lack of what is.
I do want to highlight something, because a reason why I was interested to reread Name of the Wind is because I didn't love Empire Silence, love the sequel books, but I liked Empire Silence. I'm going, this had a lot of similarities to Name of the Wind, and I liked it there and I didn't like it here. Maybe on a reread, I would like it, and I wanted to know why. And we've definitely highlighted on some key elements of one, I think, in Empire Silence, big thing is promised, and we are given something at the end. We are given a taste.
Don't spoil for people, but yep.
Some of the promise is delivered, and I see where it's going and going, oh, okay, cool. It's a setup, but I'm getting something on the promise. And then also, just like in this book where Hadrian talks about his younger self and reflects on, oh, here's when I was a stupid kid, and gives commentary. Hadrian's not that good of a character when he's young, and his older character acknowledges it and talks about like, yeah,
which makes it less insufferable than Quoth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, Hadrian is a flawed character, and he will get.
And it's presented as a flaw. Problem here, it's presented as this Quoth is this. I can't believe I didn't say this yet. This is what I think about Quoth: is an unrootable hero who's presented as a hero. That's the core problem with Quoth. He's presented as, you could talk about your Darrows, your Visses, talk about all these characters. At the very least, Darrow, Viss, whether you don't like them as characters, I really do. They're presented as heroes and actually have good qualities that should be admired. And they also are flawed. They also have flaws and overcome those flaws. And even in the first books for those series, overcome flaws. You don't have to overcome flaws. There's plenty of books with gray characters, all this. But the problem with Quoth is he's presented as Superman, not literally Superman as an analogy. He's presented as hero, character to root for, but constantly I am not on his side. I'm going, you should be very flawed right now. I want to see some.
I don't have sympathy for him either. His, especially that future perspective of how depressed he is and a man waiting to die.
That's interesting.
It's interesting, but like, I don't really care about Quoth. I don't sympathize with him. Even not that harsh. I mean, like, point being, I don't connect with the character, and so when the character is depressed and sad, and you're supposed to feel sympathy on why he's fallen so low, I go, well, your choices, and I don't care.
In a way, too, after that whole narrative happens, and then he's a man waiting to die, the modern day Quoth, I could see the man waiting to die, that whole story aspect that we discussed. Interesting. However, the story itself, seeing what Quoth did at the university and at growth, and Quoth's character, the older self should get more sympathy because you're looking at his younger self of what he once was. You have more sympathy if he's a man waiting to die because younger Quoth, if you view the narrative and go, Quoth as, man, look at what he once was. Look at this. How has he fallen this far? Yeah. How did he get from there to here? But there's none of that because the younger Quoth wasn't unrootable, meant to be rootable character. So then the older Quoth is looking back. I'm going, no, you shouldn't look back fondly. So, want to go plot? This is going to be a very long episode.
Yeah, it is.
And it should be.
It should
This has to be a thesis, right?
This has been in the works for a while now. We've been wanting to do this for, what, close to 2 years?
Close to 2 years.
Yeah.
Yes. So, plot. What did you give out of 5 stars?
I'm so willing to drop it even further. So I do want to clarify.
Yeah.
I had characters originally at 2. I'm gonna drop that down to a 1.5 again.
Oh, we're getting you lower. There we go. Total score going down. Total score.
It will be. We'll talk about that at the
baby.
End. Plot. I originally had it at a 2.25, and
want to go at mine? You've been going to mine. Can I give you my score?
Let's give you
1.75. Very flawed plot.
1.5.
Oh, go lower, damn it. You win. You won the game.
You won the game.
So 1.5 for you, 1.75.
Yeah.
Yours originally was 2 something, but you're just lowering them all.
2.25.
The more you talk about
the more I talk about it, the more I don't like it, and I see all the flaws. And you're highlighting some great points of why it sucks.
Why can't I do that when I talk Red Rising and Darrow? Go, look how cool. And then you go, no. So plot, we've talked about how boring it is for us. We should probably get more to the why, to the nuance of why did the plot bore you? What was bad about it? And why?
Let's talk about each section. I think there's 3 sections of, well, okay, technically 4. There's future Quoth, then there's young Quoth with his parents, then there's Quoth on the streets, and then Quoth in the university. Mm-hmm. Want to tackle it from the beginning of...
Let's go beginning. What does the book promise?
Yeah. Let's talk about the future sections. And overarching section. Let's talk about generally all the times it flashes forward.
Oh, this is where my biggest flaw of the book comes out. This is my thing, okay? The future Quoth, older Quoth, the end scene. Can I skip right to the end scene of that?
Go ahead.
The end scene with Bassett has been already mentioned. That scene right there brought a tension to the story between Bast and the chronicler, the story that was being told to us. Bast doesn't want the chronicler saying specific things because he wants Quoth back. Brings a motivation to Bast I'm curious about. I'm like, okay, you want it back. Now there's a motivation behind Bast. There's tension with him and Chronicler as the story's being told. That happens at the very end of the book. I think to make this plot 10 times more tense, 10 times more interesting is to do the Alfred Hitchcock method of storytelling, where you don't film a dinner scene from the top down and then all of a sudden there's an explosion 5 minutes in. You film the dinner scene with the family sitting there and the bomb's underneath the table. You know this analogy. I'm saying this for audience as well. The bomb is underneath the table and you're watching for 5 minutes as this tense scene unfoils and the family doesn't know the bomb's under there. Whoever it is, the mob bosses are making a deal. They don't know the bomb's under there. There's a ticking time bomb. Tension. You put that Bast chapter at the very end between the Bast and Chronicler right in the midpoint of the book. Even give me midpoint. As soon as that happens, and now as the story is being told to us, I feel the tension would rise as we know Quoth is telling the story, and the interruptions that then happen from there on out are we know that the Chronicler and Bast in the background, Bast is trying to get something out of Quoth and leading the story to be told in a certain way, which would emphasize the message of trying to curate a story to create a different man. This story could be perfect. I could love this book. I would so love to disagree and argue with you and be like, man, this book's great. If there were some fundamental changes there and you put that, I would like be raving over this book because I think there's something here that could be fixed. It's just, I can't write better than him. I can't do things better than Patrick Ruff. I know, I realize that, but I'm a simple critic that creates nothing of my own, that just wants to see it differently because Daddy said so. Anyways.
I think you are right in the sense of that would probably be a big improvement.
Yep.
I think ultimately, no matter how much tension that has, the bulk of the story is still boring. Everything else with it is so boring that, barring interruptions, like maybe that's improved a bit, but I don't think that fixes it.
No. With that fix would mean the story thereon after, even with those boring, dull scenes, I could see we're talking about the future self, right? The future self scenes right now. So I could see when it goes back to modern day, the scenes are different and the story being navigated and the narration, the direction it goes is purposefully being shifted because Bast is pushing the Chronicler to ask questions in a different way.
Sure.
Just more so what story is being told and how it's being told. And
I can see it being more interesting.
Yes, there's more to it than that.
Enjoy it.
Yeah. There's more to it, but that's my one thing of I love that scene and I just would like to see something done there. Of course, still Dracus, dragon thingy, Dracus lizard, boring. I know, but that's my big qualm with the plot piece. I'm trying to show a specific instance. It's tough to just go, hey, boring. I'm trying to go, what's something that I could suggest and not just be a peon going, I didn't like it. I'm trying here.
Hey, you're doing a good job.
So for you, what was it about go any direction with that? We were sticking in the future self. Do you want to go back to younger Quoth or do you want to stick in future?
I'll bring up the future Quoth.
Yes.
Of the scenes, it's definitely, for me, it's not as bad, ultimately. I don't think it's as flawed. It's just not as particularly interesting, but it's written in a way of adds some curiosity. Especially me not knowing going into this book gave me plenty of questions going, oh, I'm curious. What did happen to him? What is
Chandrian,
the Chandrian? I'm interested. Seeing how he takes on the little demons and all, like going, okay, he is something.
Yeah.
Where is that gone? So I think it serves the purpose in the book, but ultimately because as the story went on, that we got younger Quoth, and I don't like him. So when we flash back to the future Quoth, I like him less and less. In the beginning, I have the most amount of my empathy meter for Quoth was at its highest at the beginning. Because I liked older Quoth more than younger Quoth. But every time we got more young Quoth, I liked him less. And every time we flashed forward, I just don't like him
and
as much.
Still that older Quoth agrees with younger Quoth. Especially the scene where he tears up the descriptions of Denna. He still views Denna the same way.
Yeah.
I love how it was described. I love how he pontificated.
Mm-hmm.
It was well done there to show what modern day Quoth thinks. However, modern day Quoth looks at younger Quoth the same, going, I can't even describe Denna.
Now there's the question. Is what was that reason? Is I can't describe Denna, or was he going, that's wrong to
the story?
Well, no, just like I don't want to write that down. that shouldn't be written down in that way. Acknowledging it's wrong to describe her in such fashion.
Well, that's what Younger Quoth thinks too. Younger Quoth is going, oh, she's not one to. They're both in agreement of Denna being this omniscient, wild thing that you cannot describe. Which I love how it's written, but at the same time, older Quoth comes out and supports Younger Quoth throughout the journey. So maybe I'm just saying for you, maybe as the plot's going on, even though Younger Quoth is bad, you're going back to modern day Quoth and you're not seeing a back and forth. You're not seeing contrast. You're seeing doubling down. He's telling the story as if his Younger Quoth and older Quoth there's not a maturity there. It would be vastly more interesting in the plot if there was a stark maturity difference or something difference to where we see the growth by reading the present self.
Again, Empire Silence. Again, we're not even talking spoilers. I think there's a stark difference between young and old Hadrian.
Yep.
Very different. And so it's like, oh, it's interesting. How's that happened? Though in this one, there's not too much of a difference other than Quoth is sad. More sad now.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what did you think about the Quoth in his younger years when he still had parents?
I liked it most at the beginning of the book. I
agree with you.
I think we're on the same page where
it's where that curiosity comes off. It's the highlighted there of how curious he is, seeking out knowledge, and it had the most charming character interactions, I think, between him and his teacher. Had some cool tension. It's been done before. It's simple enough of him going too far and his curiosity getting the best of him. He's a little too rash. He doesn't think things all the way through because he's just so curious. And so he doesn't have patience. Fair enough. Done well enough. I can empathize with that. He's a child. You see how smart he is versus how much wisdom he has, which is very little to none at all.
Yeah.
The relationship with his teacher was pretty good. I don't really have
any
complaints.
Where'd the plot lose you? If you had to pick a moment.
Plot? Pretty quickly into the
University. Okay.
For the most part, like maybe the time on the streets dragged a bit long, but I liked it some of the most of how he was reacting things. It definitely made me more attached to the character of it's pretty direct of terrible stuff happening to him. It's pretty obvious, like poor Quoth, been beaten along the world. I mean, pretty easy to have sympathy for child character that is quite literally starving, cold, being beaten by the authorities, and everyone's out to get him. I had sympathy for him, and sure, sad.
Yeah.
And I especially like the dissociation that he had. That show, it was interesting. I immediately after his parents' death, a great scene. Fantastic scene and description of how he, in the moments of grief, trying to distract himself. He plays not a song. He tries playing songs and he retires from that and so starts going to, I am going to play the image. I am going to try and play in music the image of a autumn leaf swirling its sunset. And how that's described of how he goes about it and describing his feelings and then remembers a time with his father and tries to play that emotion until his hands were bleeding. That was compelling, moving even. So that stuff was great. And then how he dissociates even further when he's on the streets of the death of his parents is kept in the back of his head, and because he's in survival mode, that there are moments and things that remind him of his parents and remind him of that tragedy, and it snaps him back, and he's shoved back into that moment like, I'm not ready for this, and he runs away from it, literally and metaphorically. Cool. I liked all that stuff of how does a young child deal with grief.
Yeah. That was all really good stuff. And I was having this conversation with Dom, who's one of our best friends. Hey, Dom, if he's watching this. Hey, Dom. He's read Naval Wind. He might watch this.
He gave me this book.
Oh, he did, yes.
He hated the book and said, you should still read it, and sent me this.
Scratch that. He's one of our worst friends. So and I were having a discussion on how important are endings to a book. When you rate a book, when you think back fondly on a book, how important is that end scene where it concludes on your overall feelings? And I think this is a great example of, even earlier on in the book, was feeling optimistic and some good pull. I was, like you said, sympathetic for Quoth in some scenes, and there was things I liked. But as the plot progressed and ended, went so poorly that even if there's things you could applaud earlier on, it's as you think about it as a whole, just ends you with a sour taste in your mouth. And we were thinking that endings are super important with books. One of your favorite series, Lightbringer, where the last book is almost so bad that you don't even recommend the series. Game of Thrones, the show, the last season is so bad, I can't even advocate people to watch. I will tell them, hey, watch up to season 6 or maybe something. But it's
here's the thing. Even Lightbringer, I'm on the fence. I sometimes say, like, depending on the person, maybe I would recommend just trying it anyway.
Yeah.
Just because of how well it's done. But yeah, I loved that series. And then the ending was so awful for me that it's why even try?
Yeah.
Why go to the beginning?
And then with Name of the Wind, Levy from our patron, hey Levy, he brought up a good point. I think both you and I agree that the ending of this book with the Dracus and how the final act paid off.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't actually. Hollow Domain. Scott, shout out to Scott, said this. He said, "I'm at chapter 79. How the fuck did we get trying to kill a dope fiend vegan dragon? That was not on my bingo card." So, yeah, that's for some reason I did not know. I did not expect.
This was very
in
much
a bad way. Yeah,
it has that same poor taste in your mouth as like the Ryan Johnson or the Ryan Johnson mantra of subverting expectations. Constantly through this story, Quoth is saying, hey, in a standard story, you would be this, but this is not your typical story. To subvert your expectations. And so you would expect cool dragon, battle, interesting, all the lessons that Quoth has learned along the way that helps him beat the enemy at the end, and he learns a lesson. Haha, subverted your expectations. It's actually a lame dragon, and he doesn't learn anything. And
he was right all along. It was Agatha all along.
It's just like, haha, subverted your expectations. Yeah, it was shit. I expected better. I got shit. Sufficiently subverted.
And that's where it fails too, because in the subversions of expectations, in the plot twists, subversions, I've said this many times if you're listening for the first time, but you and I agree on these two tenets, where first thing with a plot twist or subversion of expectations is, was it built up in a way that makes sense? Does it make story sense if it could actually happen? Yes. It was built up that the chronicler had a scene where he was the writer of the Dracus, blah, 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 earlier on in the book. It was mentioned. There was a Dracus thing. Good. So I could see it happening. It wasn't that it was impossible. I can't believe that happened. All of a sudden, lasers are coming out. I didn't know this was a sci-fi. No, it didn't break the story. The second thing with a plot twist is that the subversion that happens is more interesting, and the story afterward is more interesting than the alternative. Than if you went the traditional route, which that fails completely. That if you went the traditional route, if you went any other route, it's just vastly more interesting. It's not a drag. Even though that it was technically set up with Dracus being mentioned, I did not think that several dedicated chapters would be put into this rather lame action scene at the end.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, and a lot of that scene is not just the action, but the character moments with him and Denna.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what lesson is learned at the end there? Nothing. It was pointless. Like, there were scenes that are apparently significant. Oh, Denna's drugged up. She's talking about how she cares about Quoth and all. It's like, oh, look, that's a reveal. But ultimately, nothing changes. Quoth still acts the same. And that whole quote that we read of cringe happened after that. So, big emotional moment, and he's still the exact same. Then why?
Scott has a great theory where Denna is Bast.
I like it.
He thinks Denna's Bast because she's the wedding survivor, knew the song, she's always around. For some reason, Denna's just always there.
Ooh,
Maybe he's cooking something. Maybe we need to just trust Patrick Rothfuss.
no. But that reminds me of a fun character from a different series I've recommended to you.
Oh, don't mention it. Okay.
If I say
Then
it,
don't
I
say
think it maybe could spoil something.
Okay,
Maybe.
then-
So
Nothing then.
we'll
Good.
talk later.
Okay.
It's fine.
So can we say something with the plot that you liked? You
Well, we
mentioned at
talked
the
about
beginning
all-
with the
we talked
sympathy
about all
boards.
this, but what did I like about the
Structure of it. Is there something with the structure you appreciated?
no
Okay.
structure? No, but again, generally liked well enough the before parents' death, the quote on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
The big contention I have is with the academy section. So what did I like about the academy section? Plot wise, not much.
Goes to school. He gets 3 talents to go to school. He's in debt for a lot of it. That's a big focus of the plot.
Plot elements that I like from the academy section. Him getting involved with music. Anything involving music was at least interesting. How he went to practice on this rooftop and he meets the kind of crazy girl. And I liked her character. It's again one of the few characters I was like, I like that character.
Neat.
Well enough. How their interactions worked out, then him getting his pipes. I liked all that. How he makes money with his music, the interactions and the emotional pull of, again, when his loot is destroyed,
Yep.
you feel that.
Music stuff, yes.
All the music plot stuff. Pretty interesting, I guess. So everything else in that section, the thing I will give credit for is with world building. I was interested in some of the magic system,
I'll agree with you there.
all that, but
Very much so.
plot-wise, what happened during the academy stuff
There's
that
a
was
lot of-
interesting to you?
It was the Ambrose and him. He was the antagonist of the story. Ambrose, big antagonist, and just
I don't care.
did not connect to it. I guess the back and forth is they not just get on each other's nerves. Quoth does something that Ambrose, embarrasses Ambrose. Ambrose does something to Quoth. Just this chain of reactions against, the typical antagonist.
Also,
in-
we want to talk about a specific plot point in the beginning of that.
Go for it. Yeah.
I think it's kind of just stupid. It's a stupid plot point that kind of took me out of it. Very unrealistic. Of when Ambrose tricked Quoth into bringing a candle into the library.
I complain about this. Yep.
Not just
Yep.
that, but also that it costs a whole talon to get into the library. And on and on and on of how much he tricked. Like, really? This is supposed to be this really smart character.
That's to go more into character section. Why I hate Quoth
I
is
thought
exactly that. Of why he's so smart, but gets the best of him when he brings a open flame into this. The Arcanum is the correct word. He brings it into this library that he's been waiting his whole life to go into. So I can see maybe it gets to his head of like he's so excited he brings a candle in. But if he's that smart, brings an open flame.
It just feels unrealistic of how he didn't hear about that, how much he's overheard. It's just,
And that's the way Ambrose gets him.
and just how shady Ambrose was about it as well. Send the other person. Oh, actually, you don't have to pay for this one. All that stuff I thought was just plot contrived, and took me out of it. I didn't like that plot point, and that's the origin of their whole beef.
I think the reason that Patrick Rothfuss has this story structured like this is he kind of just wanted character to go in here and explore this world he had, because he mentions on one of those videos I was watching, he has 5 different economies and only 2 of them were featured in Name of the Wind. He has all this stuff he thought through for 14 years. I think he has this stuff he wanted to explore, but didn't package it in a way that was interesting to us.
Yeah.
And a big part of that, I will say, I appreciated some stuff with the pacing, as in some chapters were really short, and then I got to longer chapters. I liked the change of pace at times. I liked that he altered, but I don't know if to give that to more prose or plot, but it did help with the pacing a bit. So it really comes down to that payoff and the long trudge it took throughout that book. But Rich, and I want to say Emily from Patreon said exactly what I think as well, where it's a first act of a play. Seems, and this will be a trilogy if it's ever finished. Likely won't be, as far as we know.
Likely won't.
However, do you want to go on to something we do appreciate about the book?
To that point,
yes.
First act of a play. Normally, the first act of a play has some moment at the end of the first act.
Yeah.
Generally, there's something important. It feels like this book just stops. Okay.
And it's kind of wrapped up real quick, even with the love story cringe aspect that we thought. Just, hey, here's how, because they had a scene at the end in the modern day where there was the attack, or the guy came in, the not guy, at the very end of the, help me out with the word.
Chandrian?
Was it Chandrian? The
What are you talking about?
mercenary type that walked in. Yes.
Yeah,
That
sure.
walked
Mercenary
in.
demon
Yes.
something.
Yes, the mercenary demon something, exactly.
Like, it's not even really described fully.
No.
It's demon's good enough. It's
Yeah.
something else, but demon's a good enough explanation.
Yes, and that demon comes in, and then we get back to young Quoth, and old Quoth wraps it up like this and says, hey, here's what happened with the love story. Here's what happened at the academy. That's the end of the story. Just wraps it up in
Ultimately,
that section there.
He talks about how he was kicked out of the university. I would expect if we were trying to have some type of conclusion of why this is the end point, it'd be like, and the whole book would be about how he get kicked out of the university. Now he's out on his own. Now it's a new change, but he's still in the university. Everything's kind of the same. Like,
He's
status quo. I'm going,
again. He's
okay, then why
expelled
here?
because he's too good,
Yeah.
because he learns the name of the wind.
No, he isn't expelled.
Well, he was voted. They voted him. What's the word that they use in the book? That he was voted.
Expelled, but he was.
But he was expelled, but then pushed to the Arcanum. Is that the correct usage?
It was. It's an actual legal term. Not excommunicated. Extended. Basically they put off punishment for much like. Basically, hey, look, you can be kicked out after you've already graduated. So it's one of those things of just like
Technicality type thing.
we remove the punishment, but you did the thing.
Yeah. So, want to go into something we can now start praising.
Sure.
Okay.
By the what?
Hour almost 40-minute mark. Now, good things. You ready?
Good things. Yay.
Okay. World building out of 5 stars.
4.
Great.
Great.
I'll do you
Great
one better.
world.
4.25. Really great.
There we go.
I really like this world.
Yeah.
I don't know how I was able to separate my love for the world and the hate for the plot, but I was able to appreciate it somehow.
This is the factor that changed the most from the first read and the reread. Because I knew I didn't like the characters or plot, I focused way more on the world. And I put a lot of focus into it. And I really liked it. I thought the world was great. Through every stage, I was paying attention to the little stories and less about Quoth. I was like, okay, Quoth, yeah, get on with the cool story about the weird king and
Telu
the one eye,
etc.
that stuff. Where I focused on that and I liked it. So, yeah, great world, cool. The economy system was well described, and you got to see cool levels of, the same economy within poverty versus middle class versus upper class, and how that economy changes.
Scott had a great point about that. Yes.
Very cool to see.
Yep.
The magic system we get 2 in this one of the bindings and then the naming. I liked both magic systems. One more ethereal and
soft versus
loose.
hard magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun. I enjoy that kind of stuff. So
exactly. I think sticking with magic system first is that soft magic, that difference you have in Lord of the Rings with Gandalf and then the ring. Gandalf, soft magic, ring, hard magic. We understand how the ring works. Gandalf just does poof thing. Name of the Wind, we don't understand how it works, but it's this more high ethereal thing and interesting, soft mystery. Soft magic is a good way at producing mystery. And then the hard magic of sympathetic bindings is described in a way and super cool. I even like the scene where Quoth uses a stick instead. When he's fighting the other student, and he uses something that is not a good sympathetic binding. Remind me the material he uses.
Straw.
He uses straw, which is tough to be a sympathetic binding. I thought that was a good scene, mainly because of how it showed how the magic system works.
And how he was able to overcome it, not just, I'm stronger, he was smarter. He understands the sympathetic bindings better.
Exactly.
And so he's able to use different factors where the other student was just trying to brute force it and failed.
It's
Cool.
skillful there. And I have the 3 things you need for sympathetic bindings. The first is similarity. So have something that's similar to the other object. And that's why when you're manipulating with people, you need hair or something of the sort to have some sort of similarity.
Visual similarity is not as good as a direct connection. So
Yeah.
blood, hair, skin,
Right.
whatever.
And then secondly, consanguinity, and that's coming from the person or thing, consanguinity. And then third is the conservation, where energy can't be destroyed or created, just lost or found. I like all the usages of that, how sympathetic bindings work. I think he really thought it through. And
Also gives himself a bit of a leniency talking about the strength of a binding. That a binding is not just it's bound and then it works. That be it depending on how strong of a connection, you lose energy. So something that normally is 1 pound, if it has a really, really weak connection, it can actually weigh 60.
so many more. It's great limitations for a magic system. It shows how you can't just do anything infinitesimally with it, where exactly as you're saying, even if you have 2 objects, as you're using the sympathetic binding, you're already using the weight of both those objects. So you can't just have small object and big object and move big thing, but it combines them and then it gets harder the worse your similarity is, the further degree away you are, which makes it so you have to be more inventive, and it creates a good framework for this hard magic system. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I think the name of the wind, name of the fire, we talked about that. Going back to more the mystery, the culture, the history of this world. One thing in Tarbian as a city, the culture of Tarbian, I really appreciated how some of the stories were told with the demons and why the religion there wore ash robes, and the story about Telu, I believe, is the name on yes, is that correct? I want to make sure I'm not butchering some of the names here.
Telu is the god that they pray to.
Yes, Telu and the Incanus burned to ash. That is it. So Telu, and that's why the priests wear robes of ash, because of the story told about Telu, which is earlier on in the book. And so we understand part of the religion, the culture, the history there. And on top of that, the one thing that I think does leagues for the book is the music and the Tinker Tanner song and the stories these people share. Shows the culture and shows how Tinker Tanner being the oldest song known, and the music scene itself with Quoth singing with the lute shows how important music it is, yet at the same time a shared stories and shared culture. So it felt alive.
Yeah, on a surface level, you can almost describe that Tarabine is basically, like, you could boil it down to the simplistic, it's a city with, one side's the rich city, the other side's the poor city.
Hillside and Riverside.
There's the good side and there's the bad side, or whatever. And I guess, but I think there's more to it. To me, if that was all it is, then it is pretty basic. I've seen it before. But the added benefit of their version of, not Halloween, but their holiday, of where the demon runs around in a mask and tricks people and plays pranks, and that's sponsored by the city, and that the citizen can say, like, Telu, swiper no swiping, swiper no swiping, swiper no swiping.
Yeah.
Oh man, and the demon runs off. That was great to bring it alive and show the difference between how the rich side acts, and it's treated as a game, it's playful, and then the same demons on the other side. It's a little bit more negative, of like they're far more brutal. That's great. And especially add on the scenes of, you see this play act of violence and chaos contrasted with the actual authorities just nearly beating to death a child for just being there. Not even doing a crime, but just asking for some money.
Yeah.
So, cool. Brings it alive. He does well enough to take this simple concept and expand it.
Yeah, I think he does great with magic system, and that what would you call that? The culture itself.
Yeah.
The culture and a bit of the history of Tarbian, of this world.
All the stories talking about the history, the old gods or the myths, all those were great. I enjoyed them.
And I'm very curious about who the Chandrian are. Although the book went a slightly different direction, I'm curious about the world building aspects. It's not enough to get me to read book 2.
Yeah.
Because I can't suffer the other things about this.
If someone told me, hey, guess what? Book 2 doesn't even feature Quoth. It's a completely different main character.
Right?
Yeah. Awesome. Sounds great to me. But that is not the case.
Yeah.
So
now the world building element maybe you hated the most. We've talked about Dracus.
Thing is, maybe it could be set up in a different way. And I would like it.
As a world building thing, it's not bad.
As a world building element, it's whatever.
Yep.
That, hey, look, everyone talks about this dragon,
exists.
but look, it's not the real thing is basically a gigantic Komodo dragon lizard, and is actually a vegetarian or a vegan. It's a herbivore, peaceful, whatever. It could be an interesting point and just a nugget of the world. But the fact that that's the climax,
it hurts the plot.
No.
I would say it helps the world in a way, because part of the point of the book, the point I wish was emphasized more and went in that direction, is how stories can be less cool than they actually are. The legends can be less cool than the actual story, where Quoth spreads rumors in school the constant time of what Quoth is doing. Some are real, some are fiction. The cool thing with the Drac is just showing how this world works is look at these stories the culture passes on and these big bads, but it's just a Dracus. Then at the same time, we're presented with something like the Chandrian that Quoth sees. So there are those spookier elements that do exist. There is this mystical element, yet sometimes these stories are just Dracus.
yeah.
Again, bad climax, bad plot point. World building, it gives some of that Wheel of Time. Would you say it's Wheel of Time-esque in how it shows how stories can get misconstrued as it passes on to another person?
It touches on the idea with Wheel of Time showing you the cool stuff and showing how that change. Like ultimately, Wheel of Time doesn't focus on the mundane stuff. They normally, hey, that's boring. Let's show the exciting thing. Like, example, there is a character in the world building of Wheel of Time that is exactly that. Through context, you realize that their legend is huge, and in reality, they were not exactly that. That miscommunications have gone down. That they're a lot more of a normal character. But guess what? We don't get a lot of them. We don't get a lot of that perspective. We get that through little nuggets spread throughout in passing, and you learn more of, oh, that legend has grown beyond the man. The stuff we actually get more about is, hey, look, here's the legend and it's terrible. But then, hey, here's the truth. It's amazing. But also it's tragic. It's different from it's different, but still exciting. That's the difference. Is different, but still fun. This was different and boring.
Which do you put the boring and more plot world you still appreciate?
Yeah, ultimately.
Yes.
It's just, it was a poor decision for the Dracus to be the climax of the book. That's my problem with it.
I would almost treat this like I would a history textbook, where some history textbooks, history's cool, but some textbooks are written boring and not as cool as it could be. So the world building of the history book is 5 out of 5. Incredible. The plot is, you could have emphasized, you could have told me that Hannibal came down with 100,000 elephants. Get a little flamboyant with it.
Don't let the truth get in the way of telling a good story.
Give me a cool, badass scene and go, okay, asterisk, it's not true, but it's cool.
Also, history books, there's 2 types of history books. Of one that is trying to give you the highlights and the most important information, and then the other is for academics of, we want to know even the mundane things to get past just the legends of how did that person think, and that's more the academic level.
And Patrick Rothfuss is very academic. The school is the book is in an academy, so I see how he slowly shows you that, and because of that, the world does feel very real to me. So I think he did a great job with that.
I agree.
What do you think about his prose out of 5 stars?
Is it perfect? No. There's plenty of lines in there that made me cringe. I think maybe there's some pacing issues. Not everything blew me away. But the fact that every time Quoth himself plays music, it is so incredibly moving. It's the best I've ever experienced. And the first time I read the chapter 54 or whatever it is,
I believe so, yeah.
I cried. It touched me in a special way of remind me of why I love playing music and why I love performance and just the experience that the emotions that not only an audience feels, but the performer does as well. That the fear, the risk, the impromptu decisions that have to be made. And there's a great deal of trust that has to be played with music. Because it's an ever-moving thing, you have to trust the audience, trust yourself, trust often another performer, and communication just kind of in your mind, and have to believe that they'll follow along with you. It's a beautiful thing, and loved it. So that floored me. 5 out of 5. And I'm giving it credit for that.
That's very fair review. 5 out of 5 stars for you. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Great prose.
Those
I see
scenes
why
did
you
not
gave it 5.
move you as much as they did me then. You just really liked
I'm
them.
not a musician, so I could see that it's really well done. So the reason it didn't pull me to tears is maybe my non-musician background affected that. It's really great, really well written. I think I'm pulling back and forth with the things that bothered me, some of the cringy lines that made me cringe.
Mhm.
I guess when I'm rating prose, when we're rating prose, it's the 5 out of 5 stars. The irreplicable, the irreplicable author. They have a style of their own. At the worst case, it takes me. What's the word we use? Takes us out of the story. We have a 1-word thing that we use for each of these categories, and that one is distracting. That's the word. And there were moments where I was distracted reading the book because of some of the lines. So I had to pull with that. I really respect how the writing was done. Some stuff distracted me, but I mean, those scenes were very incredibly written, especially Dom, hey Dom again, brought up a point, the battle between a Quoth and the other kid when Quoth had the straw, the chills that Quoth felt, and the way Patrick Rothfuss describes the emotion, even the way Patrick Rothfuss describes how much he loves Denna. I think he has a twisted bad way of looking at it, but the way he describes Denna, I'm going, man, okay, Quoth definitely loves her. He definitely thinks this.
He knows. Patrick Rothfuss just knows how to describe it. He knows how to get it in the right number of words. Not the shortest description, not the longest description, just the correct length of description. And always, again, he chooses the right words. It just feels like it would be hard for me to say, like, oh, you could choose a different word here. For most of the book, that's kind of how it feels, of just really quick, often with the describing the scenery. It's just so vivid, but also fast-paced. It flows with the story. I'm very impressed, especially comparing to more classic fantasy where you'll have let me stop and give you an info dump.
Yeah.
I never, their info dumps happen in this book, but I never felt it. I never felt like, oh, I'm getting an info dump. Never happened. Just felt like a part of the story. And
for example, when that Telu story was being told by, I believe it was Scarpy, the character, I believe.
It's
clearly
it's
telling
not
a
the
story.
It's the reaction from Quoth and how it's described and woven into the plot. It works well. I never feel like I'm being,
it's fair,
info dumped on.
I know our editor Nick felt he was info dumped with the story, that chapter with Talu and the stories going back. Maybe it didn't feel that way to you, especially because the story itself is a narrative. So it felt like this was a story of stories.
Also, with the setup of the Chandrian and the mystery of these historical godlike figures, makes sense of Quoth being interested in knowing more about these characters. It feeds into, Quoth's parents were killed by these mythical creatures. Of course he's going to ask the stories about what they are.
Yeah.
So I didn't think it was as an info dumpy thing.
And to your point about Patrick Rothfuss using the exact correct number of words, our patron Cuban brought this to our attention where This is known as the 7 words that will make a woman fall in love with you.
Ah, yes.
And he posted a Reddit post that listed out every time that Quoth, sorry, let me read this correctly. Every time Quoth referred to Denna or used 7 words to show and strike that love that Quoth had, he would use...
Quoth's teacher in the story says, do you know the
7 words?
Do you know the 7 words that can make any woman fall in love with you? And he's talking about the magic system of the name of the wind and naming. That if you know the name of something, you have mastery and control over it. And so going back, you look at all the interactions with Denna. I think every single time he talks with her, he has
I have the number here. There's 22 7-word phrases with Denna. Thank you for clarifying. With Elodin, and he's saying, teaching him in the magic way of the name of the wind, but Quoth uses this in his love for Denna. And
how much of that is subconscious versus after the fact of he learns this from his teacher? How much is it him trying to say 7-word phrases to Denna to get her to fall in love with him?
Right.
Yeah.
Constantly
cool attention to detail on the prose.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And it takes 14 years to carve that marble.
Yeah.
You could clearly see he spent a lot of time making sure that it was written precisely.
Yeah, if only the characters and plot were better.
Who stuck around to the end? I'm very curious. What warrior out there got to the end? Wow, we're hitting the 2-hour mark almost.
Are we?
Wow.
Damn, look at
that. Not bad.
I think there's some editing in there, so we'll be shy of 2 hours.
Just shy. Okay.
There any last things you want to talk about this book? Your expectations of me, like for 2 years, telling you I hate this book. How are you feeling going into it?
From the beginning, as I said at the beginning, I feel exactly as the expectations you set me out to. I'm not disappointed in the book itself because I expected exactly what I got. You set me up properly, so I'm not angry. I'm not happy. I'm very happy I read the book because now I can talk about the book.
Now, if Patrick Ruff has actually released book 3, say tomorrow, do you think, would you be willing to read book 2 and continue on?
If I wasn't a booktuber, I would say no. Since I'm a booktuber and just curious about most stories, I might. So that could be part of the conversation and other people that would read the book and go, oh yeah, I read book 2 and here's thoughts.
Book 3 is one of the most anticipated books in our space.
Yeah,
so
it would be more so for the fact that everybody else would be reading it, and I would want to also be in that conversation. Because if I was just reading for my own pleasure, nobody to talk to, why would I do that? It's more fun to read a book you know others are a part of and enjoying, and then book 3 will have something that will have buzz, and I want to be a part of that buzz since there's so many people that we chat with. So I would want to read it for that purpose, I think.
All right.
You?
Yeah, I'd be curious. Similar thing of if I did have interest to continue on if it was finished. Like, I didn't like the book, but if it was finished, maybe I'd give it a book 2. In the same way, there's plenty of different books out there that didn't really like the first book, but there was enough there for me to continue on of, I liked the world, or I really liked the mystery that this had. Sure, why not? I'll find out.
Malazan.
That
was an example for you.
Great example. I didn't like book 1, but there was enough there for me to go, I'll give book 2 a try. Maybe it will, maybe different set of characters and a different plot will drag me into it. And it did. Really liked book 2. So
speaking of that, I think you gave Malazan like a 2.5 or 2.25.
Yeah.
Looks like your score for Name of the Wind is still 2.25. Is that where it's staying?
No.
Where's that? What's the end Rambler Richard score? I don't think we've had a change at the end ever. This is monumental.
1.75.
You just did that to get 0.25 lower than me, didn't you?
I did.
Wow. What a drastic decrease.
Thankfully, our overall score is even more subjective than everything else.
It's very subjective, yeah.
Yeah. I don't like it.
So that's been another review.
Yeah.
And we hit the 2 hours, I think. We did it.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. I apologize, Nick. editor. Rich, do you have anything to sign off with?
Don't read the book, or do. I don't know. We sometimes do the comment down below if they.
No.
All right.
Nah.
Fuck off.